On that day, no sirens sounded. No emergency broadcast cut into the screen. No official stood behind a podium to explain what had changed. But something had. For the first time, suspicion no longer needed certainty. It no longer needed a witness. It no longer needed a human being to look another human in the eye and say, "Something feels wrong." A model had already done that job. Not with hatred, not with instinct, not with fear, with patterns. And once a pattern can make you look dangerous, the future begins to treat you differently before you have done anything at all. Some people still imagine danger as an event. A door kicked open, a weapon drawn, a law broken, something visible, something undeniable, something after the fact. But modern power has become uncomfortable with waiting. Waiting is inefficient. Waiting is expensive. Waiting means risk has already become reality. So the system moved earlier. The goal was no longer to respond to danger. The goal became to anticipate it, to intercept it, to reduce it before it fully formed. And the moment that logic entered machines, suspicion stopped behaving like a human judgment and started behaving like infrastructure. For most of history, being seen as a threat required a story. Someone reported you. Someone remembered your face. Someone told a superior what they thought they saw. There was context. There was bias, yes, but there was also friction. A human accusation had weight because a human had to carry it. Now, the accusation can exist without anyone feeling responsible for it. It appears as a score, a flag, a category, a behavioral anomaly, a recommendation for closer review. Nothing dramatic, nothing cinematic, just a quiet administrative shift from normal to concerning, because power is easiest to accept when it arrives looking procedural. The system never says, "This person is guilty." It says, "This profile resembles elevated risk." That sounds smaller, cleaner, reasonable even. But once institutions begin trusting predictions, language stops being innocent. A resemblance becomes a signal. A signal becomes a watch list. A watch list becomes friction. And friction, repeated often enough, starts to reorganize a life. A late payment, a strange route home, a keyword searched twice, an unusual purchase, a pattern of movement, a cluster, a probability. None of these things are proof. That is not a problem for predictive systems. Proof belongs to the old world. Correlation belongs to the new one. And correlation is seductive, because correlation does not need to understand you. It only needs to notice that you look similar to something it already distrusts. AI does not need to know what you meant. It does not understand why you hesitated, why you changed your route, or what happened in your life before your behavior changed. To a human being, context can transform meaning. To a predictive model, context is often just noise, unless it can be measured cleanly. Stress does not arrive as structured data. Grief does not explain itself in machine-readable language. So the system learns from what it can count: frequency, deviation, recurrence, velocity. It does not ask whether the pattern is fair. It asks whether the pattern is useful. That is a colder question. By now, this logic is already familiar. Fraud detection, security screening, hiring filters, credit risk, border control, account reviews, The names are different. The interfaces look harmless. The stated purpose is always practical. Safety, efficiency, prevention, protection. No one needs to say control out loud when control can travel under the name of caution, and caution is almost impossible to argue against. Wouldn't you rather catch danger early? Wouldn't you rather know before something goes wrong? That is why this system expands so easily. It borrows the language of care while building the architecture of suspicion. Once that architecture hardens, it changes the relationship between people and institutions. Not all at once, quietly. A warning becomes a wait. A wait becomes a delay. A delay becomes a disadvantage. And when enough small disadvantages begin stacking on top of each other, the system does not need to punish you loudly to change the direction of your life. That is what makes predictive suspicion so powerful. It does not always deny. Sometimes it just slows. Sometimes it just reroutes. Sometimes it just keeps the future slightly farther away than before. And because each individual action looks minor, the structure as a whole becomes harder to see. Maybe nothing dramatic happens. Maybe no one stops you. No one calls. No one explains anything. The system simply slows you down, reviews you longer, flags you silently, routes you differently. And if enough systems do that at once, the world starts mistaking engineered friction for personal failure. This is how modern suspicion works. Not as accusation, as atmosphere, a delay, a hesitation, a decision that comes back colder than before. And because the process sounds technical, it feels objective, too objective to argue with. That is the perfect costume for power. And atmosphere is powerful because you can feel it before you can prove it. The point of no return was not when AI learned to detect risk. It was when institutions became comfortable acting on uncertainty as if it were evidence, when probably became close enough to prove it, when resemblance started carrying more weight than truth. That is when suspicion stopped being a judgment and became infrastructure. AI did not decide who you are. It decided how early the world should worry about you. And in a system built on prediction, you do not need to become dangerous to be treated like danger. In the next episode, AI will not decide who becomes a threat. It will decide what sounds true. The day AI decided what was true